You're listening to the Sales Chameleon Podcast. Smarter sales, stronger growth, simplified.
Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of the Sales Chameleon Podcast, where selling smarter starts. I'm your host, Heather Coggins, and today what I wanted to do is hop on here and just share a real life example of how understanding the analytical type of social style can really help transform your professional interactions. And I want to take a real life example that's recently come up to kind of help talk through this. And so, if you've ever worked with someone who's not only detail oriented, but they're also juggling a mountain of, priorities, deadlines kind of become more of a suggestion, especially when there's data to crunch and priorities to rearrange, okay? And so if that sounds familiar, I think that you're going to get a lot out of this episode, because it's going to be all about unpacking how those analytical minds work and why adapting your communication style to match theirs can really be a game changer. So let's go ahead and dive right in. All right, so as I mentioned, I just recently had a situation come up that I wanted to share with you. So I want to go ahead and just kind of talk through the scenario and set the stage. All right. So I've been working with this analytical product manager to update some sales training materials that they have. And when we originally met, back last year, we had originally agreed on a timeline. But of course, as life often goes, higher priority projects come up, PTO, and then of course other factors that ended up pushing it to the back burner. And so after a few months, of back and forth communication and, him kind of giving me some of the things I had wanted, there were still some outstanding items. So I wanted to make sure I followed up. And so what I did was I sent a polite follow-up just asking for a status update. And I want to read you the response I got. Hey Heather, I apologize for the delayed response, as I had intended to reply much earlier. However, PTO and other divisional efforts related to profitability have taken a significant amount of time. I reviewed the attached training outline last March and shared some proposed edits. Email attached. I also had a chance to review the other two training outlines and modules below, and I think there may be a lot of information that needs updated and would have to be maintained, such as percentages, variables used, and acceptability criteria. Since it has low use on the internal side, I'm comfortable with archiving the modules. As for the final training item, due to capacity constraints, would end of this March work for a review timeline? Thanks. Now, if you've ever worked with an analytical, this response probably feels exactly like a textbook example of their mindset, okay? You've got the thoroughness, so if you notice, he didn't just acknowledge the delay, he really took the time to explain why it happened down to the specific task that took precedence. He also provided a lot of details, okay? Even in this really short email, he was all about details. He referenced timelines, he attached previous emails that provided me the information that I was asking about, and he even provided the rationale behind his suggestion to go ahead and archive certain modules. And then he, had that prioritization based on data. So his decision to end up archiving those modules wasn't arbitrary, right? It was backed by that low internal use and then the maintenance requirements to upkeep those modules. And so when analyticals make decisions, they don't make them lightly. They rely on that evidence and that logic, which, especially if you're not an analytical, can sometimes feel like it's slowing down the process. And sometimes it can actually, literally slow the process down. But what it does do is it ensures that the outcome is going to be well-reasoned and defensible. And so if we, kind of circle back around to my response and how I responded, I matched his analytical energy, because that's the key to connecting with someone like that. And especially in the tone and the words that I was using. Okay, so what I did was I first started by acknowledging his efforts. Analyticals put a lot of thought into their responses, and so I wanted to make sure that I started by thanking him for the detailed update. And so what I did is I said, hey, thanks for the comprehensive review and explanation. It's clear you've put a lot of thought into this. And then what I did is I addressed his pain points in a methodical way, okay? Analyticals are really going to value that structure. And so I wanted to make sure that I broke my response down into clear sections that were going to address each of the points he raised. So for example, I started out by acknowledging the delay and noted his capacity constraints. And then I agreed with the rationale for archiving the low use modules. And then finally, I confirmed that the March timeline would go ahead and work for those remaining items. Looking at my response, I ended with providing additional data where it made sense, okay? So since he emphasized data, I made sure to follow up and include metrics on how the training materials could really impact the sales rep's performance, and then tied the updates to those measurable outcomes. And so my response wasn't about, mirroring his behavior to, be able to try and manipulate him. It was all about showing respect for how he processes information, because at the end of the day, that is what motivates analyticals, and that's kind of what they're looking for in response to working with other people, is they want to be respected, okay? And so by aligning my approach with his style, I was able to go ahead and make it easier for us to move forward collaboratively. And so if we start, kind of wrapping up the episode with some key takeaways about analyticals, we need to remember that analyticals value context, okay? So when we're working with them, we need to make sure that we're providing them with as much relevant information as possible, because they really want to understand the why behind everything, all right? I'm sure when they're kids, they were the, are we there yet? Are we there yet? How much longer kind of kids. But anyways, second takeaway is deadlines are flexible when data is involved when we're dealing with analyticals, okay? Because they're going to prioritize that accuracy and logic over speed. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for those delays, especially if they feel that more analysis is needed. Third, you want to remember that analyticals are going to make decisions based on evidence. And so if you want to persuade an analytical, if you want to try and influence them with to make a certain decision, you need to make sure that you're bringing the data to back up your point or the points that you're making. And, you need to make sure that you're appealing to the emotion, or that urgency just isn't going to work. All right. And then finally, thorough responses are going to help you earn trust with those analyticals. So when you match their level of detail, you're going to end up showing that you respect their process, which ultimately strengthens your professional relationship with these folks. All right, so that is going to do it for this episode. Remember, the next time you're working with an analytical, patience and precision are going to be your best tools. So make sure you're tailoring your communication to their needs, and you're not only going to get results, you're going to really build that trust and credibility along the way. Okay. So if you enjoyed this episode, or you had a light bulb moment, please make sure that you're hitting subscribe, you're sharing it with someone who you think might be able to benefit. Until next time, keep selling smarter, stay versatile, and I will catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening to the Sales Chameleon Podcast.